Formula One has a brilliant history of cheating, but that didn't stop Rob Smedley's infamous message to Alonso's teammate Felipe Massa.
Formula One is undoubtedly an adrenaline-filled sport.
Crashed into each other to win championships, and even risked massive explosions to score points.
But it's also marred by controversy. Teams push each other to the limits, doing everything they can to gain an advantage, but sometimes it's just one step too far. Today, we look at the most incredible Formula One scandals that you've either missed or were completely swept under the rug. And yes, some of these will make you lose respect for your favourite team. Number 1. Verstappen wins in 2021. Let's get the most mainstream scandal out of the way first. The 2021 Formula One season was one of the closest ever. Not only did it pit two of the greatest drivers against one another, but it would test the rules of the sport to its very core. Things started much earlier than in Abu Dhabi. In fact, looking at the entirety of the season, we can see that everything started back in Silverstone. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton found themselves battling for the lead. A slight miscalculation by both drivers and Max was out, smashing into the barriers at a whopping 51G. Verstappen followed this up by taking Lewis out at Monza. While things got a little dirty in Saudi Arabia, Max would end the Middle Eastern race with 20 seconds in penalties for impeding Lewis. However, the most dramatic twist, often called a scandal, was seen on the last lap of the final race. Despite Lewis pulling out a whopping 20-second lead, Nicholas Latifi brought out the safety car with just a handful of laps remaining. Under normal circumstances, the race should have ended under the safety car. Since the rules clearly state all lap cars need to be given a lap to unlap themselves before green flags are once again implemented. However, F1 race director Michael Masi didn't want to send fans home with a safety car finish. Masi chose to let the cars between Lewis and Max pass, allowing the race to continue for a single lap. Unfortunately for Lewis, Max had a pit. When the race restarted, Max was on brand new fresh rubber. The extra grip meant an easy overtake was possible for the Dutchman. And one lap later, Max Verstappen was the world champion. Number 2. Crashgate at Singapore. With Fernando Alonso contending for the World Championship against former teammate Lewis Hamilton, the stakes were high heading into the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. With Alonso struggling to make any progress up the field, Renault came up with a unique plan to promote the Spaniard. The French outfit realised that they could use the safety car to promote their driver. Suddenly, Alonso's teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed. His crash brought out the safety car, promoting Alonso to the lead after all the pit stops. No one could overtake the Spaniard, allowing him to win. Only later was it revealed that Piquet was instructed to crash in order for this to happen. Is this great teamwork or cheating? Number 3. 2007 Spygate. Now, one of the scandals with the most severe punishment has to be that of the 2007 season. With McLaren and Ferrari locked in a close battle for the constructors, one team needed to get the edge. This would come to McLaren in some nefarious way. Whilst no one could determine what happened, Ferrari's internal investigations would draw out the rat. This was none other than Ferrari's head of performance development, Nigel Stepney. It was revealed that Stepney had secretly leaked information about the Ferrari car to Mike Coughlin, McLaren's head designer. McLaren was ultimately fined $100 million and completely banned from the Constructors' Championship that year. But it didn't matter when Lewis Hamilton went on to win the title the following year. Number 4. The worst Grand Prix in F1 history. If you cast your mind back to the 2005 season, you probably remember the iconic scenes from the United States Grand Prix. In what should have been a great race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, however, one of the bank corners put a lot of pressure on the tyres. Since F1 had 2 tyre manufacturers, the problem didn't affect everyone. However, most cars were using the new Michelin tyre. Unfortunately, the tyres kept bursting on the bank corner. This forced Michelin to pull their tyres for the race, stating that the tyres were unsafe. The FIA chose to continue the race, but only those running Bridgestone would take to the grid. The race had only 6 drivers, which became an easy 1-2 victory for Ferrari. Thankfully, this didn't change the championship too much. Alonso still managed to win the title despite missing this crucial race. Number 5. The expanding tyre saga. And sticking to the tyre dramas of Formula One, we should also look at the 2003 scandal. One important thing to keep in mind is that Formula 1 tyres have a certain size. This is all determined by the FIA. The full dimensions should be similar for every car and every driver on the track. However, things were a bit different for those using the Michelin tyres. In fact, their front tyres were suspected to expand beyond FIA limits when the car was driving. This would give the tyre more surface area, significantly increasing the grip. It was later determined that since Michelin doesn't have the stiff sidewalls of Bridgestone, it might be possible. While no one was truly impacted by this and the FIA couldn't award any penalties, the rules were significantly updated. This meant that all tyres would be measured before and after a race, and the problem quickly took care of itself. Number 6. Villeneuve wins the championship in 1997. The 1997 season finale at Jerez is perhaps one of Canada's best moments in Formula 1. Two drivers were fighting for the title, with the main protagonist being Michael Schumacher, followed by Jacques Villeneuve. With Schumacher leading the championship, he simply had to finish ahead of the Canadian to win the title. However, Villeneuve was a man on the mission and would fight his way back in the race. However, controversy struck when Villeneuve tried to overtake Schumacher in the later stages of the race. Unfortunately, Schumacher simply ignored the Canadian, turning in on him and causing a DNF. The German was ultimately disqualified from the race, handing the championship to the Canadian. Number 7. Schumacher exploits. In 1998 was another extremely close season. Battles were dominated by McLaren's Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher. Whilst the two were battling on track, the safety car came out, which meant that Michael was stuck behind his rival. However, as the safety car entered the pit, Schumacher overtook Häkkinen illegally. Unfortunately, the German had to wait for the green flags to be waved. The FIA would go on to give Michael a 10-second stop-go penalty. Unfortunately, the layout of Silverstone is such that a driver actually crosses the finish line when they enter the pits to take the penalty. Schumacher and Ferrari knew this. Instead of pitting Michael one lap before the end, his crew instructed him to pit as he was coming to finish the race. With Michael entering the pit, he crossed the finish line, handing him the win. This would be an extremely controversial moment of the season, only bested by the tragedy at Spa. Number 8. Team orders lead to a fine. Back in the 1990s, using team orders to change the finish of the race was not uncommon. In fact, Rubens Barrichello had to yield his lead on several occasions while helping Schumacher to become champion. But nothing as severe as the 2010 Brazilian Grand Prix. Heading into the race, it was a pure fight between Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari's Fernando Alonso. Team orders came over the radio, asking the hometown hero Felipe Massa to yield and allow his teammate to pass. This would earn the Spaniard enough points to force the title to go down to the final race in Dubai. This would bring Alonso closer to the German, but ultimately it wasn't enough. With Vettel winning the final race, he completely sealed the championship. The upside to this scandal is the fact that it forced the FIA to remove an 8-year ban on team orders. This initially started due to the Schumacher and Barrichello teamwork. Number 9. Monaco 2014. By 2014, there was only one team challenging for the title, and this was none other than Mercedes. In fact, 2014 would see the start of the Mercedes dynasty, but not without any real controversy also rearing its head. Driving for the German team was Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, both fighting for the championship. However, Monaco would be a very important race. Since there are almost no spots for overtaking around the Principality, Rosberg might have used some cunning techniques. Once he had completed his first flying lap, the German was sitting pretty on a provisional pole. Unfortunately, the second round of flying laps was about to take place. With Rosberg merely a tenth of a second ahead of his teammate, he had to do something. When Lewis did his second run, he was lighting up the score sheets with purple sectors. Suddenly, yellow flags were waved when Rosberg went off after locking up. Due to the nature of the track, yellow flags were waved. This meant that Lewis had to slow down, completely ruining his lap. Rosberg might have won this battle, but would ultimately lose the championship by the end of the season. Fortunately, he would win the championship against Lewis in 2016, which was quite another controversial season to say the least. Number 10. Extra fuel for Ferrari. Finally, we must look at the 2019 Formula 1 season. With Mercedes now dominating for the better part of 5 years, Ferrari had to do something. Despite Mercedes dominating every aspect of the season, the Scuderia had a great run of form around the summer break. Leclerc took his maiden victory at Spa, but also followed this up in front of the Tifosi. Unfortunately, this Monza race would ultimately lead to a lot of suspicion surrounding the Italians. With their car the fastest in a straight line, many suspected they were exceeding fuel flow and oil burn regulations. Yes, Formula 1 has various regulations to ensure cars don't overuse fuel flow and oil, but Ferrari found a way to manipulate this. With so many complaints, the case was finally taken up by the FIA. After seizing the Ferrari power unit, they discovered various fuel weight discrepancies. Ferrari would be penalised for the following season, being forced to use less fuel. It would turn out to be one of the worst seasons in the storied history of the Italian manufacturer. Fortunately, modern technology and sensors now make it almost impossible for cars and drivers to be cheating. Modern F1 cars are rigorously inspected, but one cannot always control what happens off the track. And this makes it interesting to see what could happen in the future. Thanks for watching this video, and make sure to like and subscribe.